Greetings, Internet. I'm Danni Danger with Weird Girls, and I am here with Megan Levens and Jamie Esrich, who are responsible for Madame Frankenstein, among other books. And we're going to talk about some of those books today. But I want to start out with you guys introducing yourselves. So, Megan, say hi.
Hi.
And
hi,
this is Jamie.
Hello.
Hey. So, one of the things I loved Madame Frankenstein, and so I want to get as many people into this book as I possibly can, all day, every day. So, imagine that no one watching this has read Madame Frankenstein. What is the book about, in your own words, Jamie?
Well, essentially, it's a take on the classic Frankenstein story, but we updated it to the 1930s, and we made basically we sidestepped the actual Frankenstein's monster, and we went straight to Bride of Frankenstein. And so it's about a man who decides that he will rebuild whom he believes is the love of his life after she is killed in a car accident, and try to make her into his perfect woman, and then all the complications that come from there.
And so, Megan, you have talked a little bit in past interviews about your love affair with Mary Shelley. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, like, incredible fandom?
It's just admiration for her role as being a very early, or the first female science fiction and horror creator, and the fact that she's sort of credited with creating those genres. And for being for being a woman and for being as young as she was at that time, that was beyond incredible. So I'm a little biased as a female creator in admiring her for that.
And when you talk about being a fan of hers, the female lead in the story is not traditional for the Frankenstein mythos. What kind of changes did that make on the story, on the story's themes? What was it about having a female lead for this story that was so enticing for you?
I think it was less exploring themes of man creating life or man playing God, and more exploring the themes of men's relationships with women, specifically an unhealthy male relationship with a woman, and ideas of control and ideas of manipulation. And even in everyday relationships, you can see examples of people trying to mold someone else into the image of something that they consider their ideal. So it was just taking that to an extreme.
Yeah, there's definitely an idea of like what his expectations were after he built his creature versus what it would have been had he just sort of created life from scratch and watched it grow as like this extended child. Instead, he was basically hoping that this woman would now come back around and find him as appealing and attractive as he always wanted her to in real life. And at the same time, controlling, as Megan said, the aspect of control, and how he tries to mold her and make her a new person is ultimately where his hubris lies.
So one of my favorite things about this story is that line between what is monster and what is human, and you guys did a really good job of surrounding Gale with characters to illustrate that. Can you tell me a little bit about some of your favorite characters from the story and how you use those characters to illustrate that line?
I love Irene. Go ahead. I found her to be a really interesting character to set aside Vincent, because she's sort of the monster in her passiveness, like that she's an accomplice to this and she doesn't really stand up until the very end. That's where her weaknesses are. That's her sin, is that she just stands aside and assists, but watches this whole thing go awry and is kind of like, oh no.
I really loved Irene's character, because while I was reading it, I'm sitting there like kind of yelling at the book, like, where are you helping? Yeah. You are a terrible Negro.
Well, I wanted her to be like the Igor
Yeah, that was his initial description of Irene. Was he's like, she's Igor, but you know, a cute girl.
Yeah, so I don't know if I said cute girl. I think you just decided to make her cute. Uh,
She's a Megan girl. She's gonna be cute no matter
it was
what.
the idea that that she was the assistant, and so she's as locked into there. I think we tried to give a little bit of a hint too, of like maybe she has her own affection for Vincent,
Yeah.
and given their past, we didn't get that heavy into it. But that idea that she's complicit and she's been there all along.
Yeah.
For me, it was kind of imagining then too, like who they would encounter outside of the lab, and that was inventing the ideas of like going to the carnival or going to the big party, and where. I mean, and that's where the sort of My Fair Lady Pygmalion connections came in, of like where he was going to take her in order to try to show her off, because he's very cocky and he thinks that he can get away with this. So he wants her to interact with other people and them to be fooled and not know that it was something that he stitched together. And so I found that interesting, of like trying to figure out what the different aspects, and it kind of became a class aspect of like the people at the carnival reacted to her one way, whereas the people at the party, the well-to-do college kids reacted to it in a different way. And I think even in the script, I noted at one point that there's mean girls everywhere, and
Yeah.
girls reacting to her at the party because all the men are paying attention to her.
Yeah.
Oh.
I remember that.
I really did. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, given her background, it just made sense too. Like she probably pissed off a lot of women in real life as well.
Yeah.
Before she was reanimated, she was not the nicest human being, and so I think actually every other scene we have her in is she's like the only girl usually. So
yeah, she would be the center of attention, and a lot of guys' girlfriends would have hated her in life, and probably would still hate her even as a reanimated corpse.
I did really like that revisited theme of the damage that women do to each other and the way that we like hold ourselves socially. But going back to the carnival, the carnival did story-wise a lot of really incredible in character development and showing like hope and humanity. Why a carnival, and why was it so important that the things that were addressed in that carnival scene get addressed?
I think it really, when I was writing the synopsis, it was really the basic idea that Vincent presents of like, well, we'll go hide you somewhere where you're not going to be the weirdest thing anybody's going to see. And you're researching 1930s carnivals and sideshows and finding these interesting characters. Like the fire breather is actually based on some photos I found and sent to Megan, and that whole thing where he lights the top of his head on fire as well is like this weird image I found.
Yeah, he wrote that into the script, and I was like, he lights his hat on fire. What is this? And I pulled up the reference image and thought, oh, that's awesome. We gotta do. It's like, that's gonna look great.
So like it all just kind of came out of that, of like, well, what she's gonna find, and then the idea that she would be taken to see the burlesque sideshow. And I think part of that actually came out of remembering my father has this thing where when I was younger he would tell me stories, and then when I was older and I would like bring those up, he would pretend that I had imagined that he had told me these things, even though I could tell he was lying and he was messing with me. And he told me stories about going to a carnival sideshow, and his was a little more grotesque. He remembers sneaking into, well, when he told it to me the first time, he told me he had snuck into a sideshow tent and he saw a morphodite, which he meant a hermaphrodite.
Yeah.
And then it changed to like, no, I didn't see that. He claims now to have seen a woman who smoked with her vagina.
And you didn't write that into the comments.
But I think that kind of influenced what I was like, this idea like there's this tent where these things are happening, and what that would be if you were a kid and you were seeing all this stuff. And so I was writing Gail at that point as like, she's a kid, she doesn't know what she's looking at, and so the guy that can control fire, which she's scared of, fascinates her, and then this image of womanhood that she hasn't seen fascinates her, and it kind of grew out of that.
I have to say, one of the most heartwarming moments in in the whole comic was just like this one brief panel where she's looking at the tiki girl outside of the burlesque tent, and the girl winks at her and gives her like this reassuring nod, and it's just like, it was really touching, and I actually really loved that scene, and that was so nuanced that I was very impressed.
Yeah, that was definitely Jamie's call in the script, but I liked that because it's sort of the flip side of how women interact with each other socially, like kind of this very sexy woman just giving Gale this like, hey girl.
Yeah.
Like a sort of approval, sort of a greeting and an approval, like, hey, you know, we're all here together. The guys are all going to stare at us. It's just how it is.
That was definitely one of my more fun research days of looking up the burlesque.
It must have been
Same with Lady Killer. All the days
Yeah.
I spent looking up the Playboy Bunny Club, that script for Lady Killer took way too long.
Yeah, he sent me a lot of burlesque costume reference. He's like, all right, no, I know exactly what Linda's going to be wearing for this.
I'm done now.
Yeah.
Really.
You're shirtless fire breather, so.
Yeah, hey, equal opportunity.
Right.
So, speaking of drawing, Megan, we talked about this a little before the interview started, but Gale is a character who doesn't have a full range of communicative abilities. She doesn't talk a lot. So a lot of her emotions are expressed by facial expressions. And I have to know, like, these really clear, very, emotional facial expressions. How did you draw those so accurately into the book?
It's been something I've focused on since midway through college because I had a portfolio review, probably before even I met Jamie, where that was the biggest critique, was that my characters' expressions looked kind of bland, that they all sort of looked meh, like they weren't really excited, they weren't really. So that was something that I worked really hard on in the coming years, was making sure that I could draw subtle expressions that read very clearly, could draw extreme expressions that could read very clearly. So it's something that's always in the front of my mind when I'm drawing a character, is less how they look or how they're dressed, but what they're feeling. And like I was saying, I will make the faces of the character I'm drawing while I'm working. So, my workspace right now is in my kitchen. My roommate will be watching TV and look over, and I'm like drawing Crazy Eye Vincent going, holding that face while I'm drawing so I can feel where the muscles are pulling or where the eye would sort of compress. And, it sounds sort of intangible, but that's how it works for me, is if I make a goofy face, then I can draw it a little more clearly.
That's actually kind of brilliant.
Now I feel like I have a challenge to like really give you some terrible faces to draw.
You have to, and then
right?
Hire someone to take pictures of me while I'm doing it, because I have no idea.
Yes, absolutely. So you mentioned what the characters are wearing, and you say, it's not quite as important as facial expressions, but it's obviously very important to you because, damn, every woman in that book looks good. So what kind of research did you do to inspire yourself to make sure that each person looked individual, had their own style, that the fashion was authentic?
I actually found a book that was fashions from the old Sears catalogs between 1929 and 1938, and I just bookmarked the years between when this book would have happened and what fashions would have been permissible. Like, obviously some older styles would have been okay for lower class characters, and then the real cutting edge gowns for the party girls. And I just would go shopping through that book. Like, when I needed a new outfit for a character, I would flip through the pages and put a pin in a whole outfit, and say, all right, that's what Gale's wearing to the carnival, and this is what Irene's gonna wear in the lab. This sweater, that looks like Irene. That's, it's fashionable but sensible. And then Party Gale would have been like the cutting edge of evening wear and party dresses, and Gale is like kind of scaled back because other people are picking her clothes for her. So she doesn't really have as much of an individual style.
Gotcha. Oh, I love it. I can imagine just like flipping through all the books. It'd be fun.
Right now, I just watching Downton Abbey. Right now, I just want to go back and like draw more Madame Frankenstein. Catching up, and I want to put everything Mary Crawley is wearing on Gale.
Damn it!
I know. Like, why didn't I think of that
one? Maybe. Well, you know, I mean, maybe I'm going to skip ahead to a question because it seems to work out really well here. Spoiler alert, if you have not read the book, you may want to turn the sound off for just a minute, and I will wave my arms in front of my face like a crazy person when the spoilers are over. All right, are we good? We're clear. All right, so the ending. One of the things I liked the most about the book was the ending. And just how everything left off, where everyone's emotions were sort of addressed, but there was still a very much like hanging. There's more to the story. There could be more to this story, or this could just go on and on. How did you guys determine how you wanted to end this story?
Well, actually, when Megan pitched the idea, she basically said, like, I have this concept, and it's the basic concept of Madame Frankenstein, of this guy, and I think you even said it was the 30s at the time.
Yeah.
But it was like this guy, and she had drawings of Gale, and she's like, and he builds his woman, and he tries to make her perfect, and of course, the more sentient she gets, the less perfect she becomes. And she's like, and then I don't know what to do from there, but I have this image at the end where she's like, her head's in a jar, and she can't get out, and she wants to, and maybe her hand's reaching for her, yeah. And so when we talked through that, I was like, well, okay, that's a great ending. Let's see if we go there or if it goes another way. And then it just kind of all dovetailed toward there. It's like, we're really gonna break your heart and make it bad. And it's just like I always kept the possibility in mind that like something else might come up, but there never was a better ending than that last image.
Yeah.
So that's
that
all.
Last image, yeah.
She's
that last image is really cool.
Yeah, I actually sold that original page before the issue even hit stores.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's in someone's living room somewhere. I apologize to his wife.
Oh.
Word you say a lot.
Yeah. So this is what I'm talking about.
Oh. So it's been sort of the way that the story was structured. If there were another adventure for Gale, what would it be?
I have an idea.
Yeah,
yes.
We've batted around some ideas. We have talked about it. And Irene does come back. She kind of tries to... Yeah. So she tries to...
What I wrote out was called Madame Frankenstein 1950.
Yeah.
And if this one was the F. Scott Fitzgerald version, the next one is the John Steinbeck.
Yeah.
And it gets a little darker, a little more homey. Gale takes control in an interesting way. And then Vincent is worse.
Yeah.
It can happen, right? No. Surely you jest.
No. Comes back around. He's a good guy. He was just misunderstood.
The way I have it, he spends a lot of time in jail, and then he spends a lot of time being a coward in the war, and using World War II to experiment on bodies while he's in combat.
Yeah.
And then syphilis.
Oh yeah.
And syphilis. Just wrap it all up with the syphilis.
Syphilis does a lot to his brain. So.
I feel like syphilis is a good time to wave in the spoiler-free people.
Come back for the syphilis.
Come back.
Yes, come back.
That's my OkCupid profile.
All right. Oh God. So, not entirely related to the syphilis. Jamie, you and I talked about when we were when we were emailing back and forth setting up this interview about how I had made a Madame Frankenstein playlist, and you said you had made one as well. And so what are some of the things that are on your Madame Frankenstein playlist, and why did you choose those things?
Well, I was invited at the beginning of last summer to do a playlist for Eat Geek Play, and they wanted, so I kind of did one that was covering all the projects I was working on. So I picked like one of Megan's favorite artists, Lana Del Rey,
Oh God.
for Gods and Monsters. I'm trying to remember what else was on there now that I'm thinking of it, because I didn't actually have a playlist when I was working on it. So I was picking songs that sort of fit Damon Albarn's Hostiles, kind of songs about like odd, sort of these contentious relationships that you love and you hate at the same time.
Oh, that reminds. No, go ahead.
I was saying there's an old Coward song, I've Been to a Marvelous Party, that the Divine Comedy did a cover of, that sort of was this jarring sort of use of techno versus old, like Noel Coward 30 style. And so I was kind of working off of that too, of like this idea of the combating ideas, and that
That's
made me
awesome.
definitely think of issue 5 and the big party she goes to. And
so one of the other things that we talked about that I did want to touch on, because I had never heard of this before, and so if you don't mind, I'll take a little bit of your time to ask you to explain to some of our viewers, what is a teaching guide, like for comics, and how commonly are these things used?
I don't think they're very common, but it's essentially like and I assume this is like also written for like YA books and other books that might go into schools. It's an idea of like you could take this thing. I mean, it's like say like the Hunger Games, and you could sort of look at other aspects of the Hunger Games that draws in on mythology or on the old story, The Most Dangerous Game. And so an idea that if like teachers wanted to use the book in their classes, that they could have this as a springboard and look at. I mean, you've probably seen it. I mean, in some ways, it's kind of like what's in certain Cliff Notes and other textbooks, where it's like, well, now you've read Hamlet, think about these themes and these other stories, and so we're hoping to be able to do that for Madame Frankenstein. That was Jennifer de Guzman at Image suggested that, because of Pygmalion and My Fair Lady and Mary Shelley and the other mythological things that we bring into it, that she felt there's a way. And F. Scott Fitzgerald, there's a way for people to actually use it, as long as they're not offended by the boobies.
What's offensive about boobies?
That was our favorite criticism we actually got, was someone who accused us of pandering to teenage boys by not giving Gail a shirt while she's being reanimated, because teenage boys need to read comics about corpses in black and white because they can't find naked women anywhere these days.
Because there is free porn on the internet.
Yeah, no teenage boy has the internet. They have to read Madame Frankenstein to see movies.
They have to read this weird feminist horror comic book in order to see boobs.
We did get one review that was basically like the absolute opposite, and he knew it. He kind of knew that like this is not what they intend, but he felt this was an example of what happens when a man lets a woman take too much control.
Oh yeah, that guy. He was great.
He called me a feminist milksop was what his term for me was, but he was like, this proves like women in the workplace and all these other things. This is what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
You should have t-shirts.
To his credit, to his credit, he was the only person who did not gripe about the fairies.
Yeah.
So about the fairies, like where did that come in? And that's an interesting point, because I really liked the fairies. Like I thought it was a great contribution to the story. Yeah. And Vincent's mental state.
Yeah, it was Jamie's suggestion, and my reaction to it was two-part. Where the first I was like, fairies, really? And then I was like, yeah, fairies. And then, and then it just suddenly made sense to me. Like, you know, for me they were a way of showing when Vincent was coming unhinged and when Gail is becoming more herself. Like that's
he's stoned for the first couple times they show up.
Yeah.
And then you never know quite, because since we tied it into the Codingling fairies, and whether she actually saw them for real when she was a kid, you still don't know. Yeah. And I felt that was a particularly cruel moment when she claims to him, like, well,
I made it up.
Yeah, all true. And he's so intent on proving her right. So I don't actually remember why that came along. I think I just was looking at things and trying to expand on the story, but half the time I don't know what. I don't remember why I do things sometimes.
So, but the moral of the story is that anti-feminists really hate fairies being added to classic mythological story. No fairies, under no circumstances.
Best friends to them, it's like, this is not, we don't want them here. They can cause trouble.
This bar does not serve fairies. Please get out. So
Aries.
With the teaching guide, and to me that's really a powerful concept, because if there is one thing for each of you that a young guy or could take from your story, what would you hope that would be?
I think it's a common theme in my stuff is like in general you just gotta let people be who they are. And so for me, Vincent's downfall is he's not letting Gail be her own person. And I think that's a very toxic aspect for particularly young men that we get into. And often very romantic young men can hit these problems where you idealize your object of affection. And I'm sure it goes the other way. Like women idealize men as well. And so not allowing them just to be themselves. And I think in general in life, if we just allowed people to be who they are and stay out of each other's way, we'd be way more happier.
Yeah, and the idea that striving for perfection can take you further from it.
That too.
Yeah.
That too. Also that.
Not by your bed.
Yeah, well, just the idea that, you know, he's trying to build this perfect woman and he ends up creating something with scars and that can barely speak, and he has to retrain her how to use silverware. I mean, the more you meddle to try and make something your ideal, the further you're going to get it from something that you really want. The further it's going to be from something that is healthy or functional.
In a panel full, or in a wide array of characters who are very flawed and very human, which characters do you relate to the most?
For me, it's tough because I do sort of stick to that line of like you have to relate to everybody in a way. Like none of your villains are bad.
Yeah.
They think they're doing the right thing, and so it's allowing them to make their own. And again, allowing them to make their own mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, Joelle and I are having this conversation about Peck in Lady Killer, who I particularly gravitate to because he's fun to write. And so we were debating like actually how accomplished he is, as he's the main character's handler, and so he's like in charge of these assassins, and we were debating like how accomplished he actually is. Where I'm like, this guy knows what he's doing. He's just an asshole, but he's so charming, and that's my point of view. I mean, actors say that too when they play a villain. You don't play a villain like I'm bad and I'm going to do these evil things. You have to sort of believe that you're right.
Yeah.
But I guess if it came down to it, geez, it'd be tough because I identify with both Vincent and Gail in different ways, and I'll cop to being a Gemini at that point of like, I'm my own worst enemy and my own best admirer at the same time. So their relationship to me makes sense.
Yeah, I'd say I can relate to some aspects of Gail and Courtney, like. Definitely not being unpopular by reason of jealousy, like having people just making a lot of enemies early on in life, and then Gail just kind of in her quietness, I guess, like how she kind of quietly boils through the series and comes up to finally making a move and standing her ground. I could relate to that a lot because there were a lot of relationships and friendships in my life where I sort of sat back and took it all in and took it all in and took it all in, and then microscope to the side of the head.
Oh,
actually, if you put it that way, I would say like there's an element then to me as well to Vincent, in that in my relationships in the past. Hopefully I'm better now, but I know I've in the past where I would have been attracted to Courtney, which was the woman before she died. It was a completely wrong choice, but she's flashy and she seems interesting because she's out having fun. And then I would completely have missed the Gail walking by, who maybe actually would have been more interested in me and would have been more long-term interesting. And so that dynamic probably sort of worked in there for me as well. But I try to write instinctually, so I don't always sit there and think about that kind of stuff. I just kind of let it happen, and it all makes sense later when I'm doing interviews. Where I'm like, oh yeah, I did do that. That's right. exactly what I intended.
Yeah, there's a lot of that with drawing too, where people are like, so "How did you decide to take it this way?" I'm like, "It just seemed like it worked." Yeah, no, I completely planned it that way. Carefully planned it out. I did not at all draw that while drinking.
My entire house is just walls of whiteboard where I write down things so that later I can reflect back on them.
Yes.
Nope. So, Jamie, I wanted to ask you some questions about Lady Killer because Lady Killer has been Lady Killer's amazing. It's been really well received. So, for those who have not picked up Lady Killer #1, shame on you. But can you tell the new readers what it's about?
Lady Killer, is maybe the easiest elevator pitch I've ever worked on. It's basically a 1950s housewife who is secretly a government assassin. And it grew out of an idea that Joelle Jones pitched to me. I seem to be having luck with letting the artists, and particularly the lady artists, pitch me ideas that they want to do. And this was like 3 years ago that Joelle and I started working on this. And that was her basic idea. She's like, this period of time, the late 1950s, early 1960s, there was a definite there's a definite malaise amongst housewives because during the war they were pushed into work. They started getting educated, but in the 50s it was common to go to school to be a nurse for 2 years, but then leave once you found a husband. And then these women would find themselves really bored, and which is Betty Draper on Mad Men is a great example of that. Of this drinking a lot of wine, nothing to do all day, particularly as advances in cleaning, like vacuums and all these other things, made it easier. So it would take 2 hours to clean the house, and you're like, what do I do all day? And so Joelle sort of began with that idea, and what if she gets sucked into this life of being an assassin, and discovers she's really good at it and really likes it. And so that's where we began. And so that's kind of the story we're telling now is that character midway into her career as a killer, and finding out, maybe for the first time, questioning who she's working for and why. And so it's very dark. It's very comedic. It's a dark comedy in a lot of ways. It's very violent. But it's also, again, it's like women in fabulous clothes doing terrible things. And so Joel's mainly writing it, and then I'm sort of the backseat driver where I help with certain scenes and rewrite the dialogue for a lot of it. And as was pointed out, Peck, who is her boss, her handler, I'm really good at writing because I'm apparently really clever at writing creeps. And but I mean, I seem like as a Cary Grant type that just shows up charming, pushes the dead body, gets rid of the dead body for her, and then moves along. But that's been sort of the fun dynamic of her and I working together and sort of exploring these old tropes, and as far as women and men and their roles. And it's been interesting because I am definitely much more the observer at this point. Sometimes I joke I'm either the third nipple, to where you don't know why I'm there, but I'm there, or I'm like the wolf in Harvey Keitel in Pulp Fiction, where I walk in and I'm like, all right, this is a mess. And it's not. That's a bit of exaggeration because there's never been anything that's that messy. But there's a couple scenes where Joelle will just be like, okay, rewrite this and see what you can come up with. And so that it's been a really fascinating process and sort of enjoyable to work on in general for that, and having to learn to sit down and shut up a lot more, which Megan knows I'm not good at.
No.
That's awesome. One of the things I really like about the character Josie is that she, there's this, she's definitely got those delicate sensibilities, but she still does this thing, this really brutal, gory thing, and she's very good at it. And so, writing that kind of character, what are you trying to? How's this question? I think this was actually just sort of a compliment that I was trying to turn into a question. That didn't work out really well at all.
Well, I get what you're saying, because her character has evolved, I think, the most in all this development we've done, and she's gone from being a far more comedic personality in her normal life, but to being sort of more calm across the board in general and collected. But I mean, we were looking at these element too of she's got twins, she's got the mother-in-law, she's got to take care of this house, so she's already juggling so much. and a lot of her character's origins were she's really the one taking care of the house. She's the one taking care of family. She's really sort of he might be going off to work and bringing back the money, but she's also probably earning money he doesn't even know exists, and that kind of thing. Like she's so in control of everything. And it's Joelle sort of was the one that finally landed on, like, when she's out killing, she doesn't say much at all. In fact, there's a draft of my dialogue for that first issue where Joelle is killed. Like, there's dialogue everywhere, and she just cut it all. Until I never did that again. I learned, like, oh, you don't want Josie to speak for the most part while she's killing. So it's that idea of, like, she's very much in control all the time, but she's really in control when she's taking care of business. Whose cat was that?
That's Frodo.
Yeah. Mine's been up and down the whole time, so.
I was like, is that a cat or a baby?
No, that's Frodo. His dinner time is not even here yet, but he's making sure that I know it's coming up in like 45 minutes.
He just wants to say hi to your internet guests.
That's right.
That's totally understandable.
He's like, talk about our books.
You're Aphrodite. Shut up. And he's in Buffy. I put him in Buffy too.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so fantastic. I would probably put my cat in Buffy as well. Does he hang out with Miss Kitty Fantastico, who apparently seemed to have completely disappeared from the Buffy universe one day?
Totally unrelated kitten appearance, but it was called for in the script, so it seemed like an obvious opportunity.
Oh yeah, of course. He needs. Yeah, he agrees.
Yeah.
So going back to Lady Killer, I've always kind of wondered this, and Megan, maybe you can weigh in a little bit on this too, being an artist, but fight scenes in comic books. I've always kind of wondered how that works. I know Megan storyboards professionally, but in terms of collaborating, what is that process like when you're trying to plot out a fight panel for panel?
Usually I try to be practical, and I try to think it through of like what I need to accomplish, what I need to talk, and I would not say I'm very good at it. In the fight scenes in Lady Killer, I pretty much have done nothing except put dialogue on him. Joelle really gets into that and does photographs, and her fiance is a trained actor, theatrical actor, so I think he's helped her block some of it out. So I find it really hard. Jeff Parker recently, because I was interviewing him for my show, Back to the Gutters, he said that when he's writing, and since he does a lot more plot, Marvel style, he just is like, okay, here's a fight, and here's what I need to accomplish. You choreograph it, because in reality, it's a lot of the thing. That's something that the artist, assuming, would do better on the page. I do that sometimes with conversations. I think in 12 Reasons Why I Love Her was where I began that, where they're in a cab talking, and I was like, okay, I could tell you angles and try to jump back and forth. Here's the dialogue, and you figure out how to make it look interesting for them being in a cab. So I think for writers, it's sometimes learning to just go, this is what you're going to be good at. I'll trust you. I might need a certain injury, or I need these kind of information to come out, but otherwise, like, yeah, that stuff I don't know. I don't know how. Megan, have you done any fights yet? Or I guess you're probably doing it at Buffy.
Yeah, well, I was actually thinking of the fights from Madame Frankenstein when the conflicts sort of come up.
True.
And, like, Vincent versus Henry and Gail's action scene at the end. You actually were good at giving me the cues for the props that I needed to use, like where things needed to be located, and that helped me kind of visualize where the fight needed to move, because, Gale needed to use one object as a weapon, and then another character would have to move over to something else to defend themselves, so you kind of have to think about where these things are in the lab, and that kind of choreographs it for you.
Yeah.
Practically.
And Lady Killer has a lot of that practical elements, too. It's like we don't want her walking in there with a gun.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it is finding like what's in the house, and then when things go wrong, what's going to be available. And I think going even back to You Have Killed Me was learning that kind of thing of like, well, if I'm going to need this prop, I have to figure out how to get it in there earlier.
Yeah.
So that it's not just like, there it is, there's a gun, or there's a bottle, and it's like...
And that they're using it too, or like interacting with it so they're aware of it and think to go to it. Like the microscope, when Gail's kind of playing with it and then sort of picks it up and realizes this has got some weight. And it's her version of Peggy Carter's stapler.
Right. I just thought that would really piss off a scientist if like you beat him to death with his microscope. Like, it's...
When I read that, I was like, oh, this is going to be the hardest thing to draw to beat someone up with.
It's so easy to write, though. Oh my god.
Yeah, I know. But it looks so good in the end.
All those crowd scenes, I'm like, and there's a bunch of guys there. Fun.
You're like, a crowded theater! Another crowded theater!
So 2 more questions about Lady Killer, and then I want to talk to you guys about Aries and Aphrodite. So the letter section of Lady Killer I really like. So are you trying to continue to cultivate more questions directed at Josie, particularly those of like domestic advice?
Yes, we're hoping we'll get some of those, because all the ones we've done so far where we sent out copies to Dark Horse had a list of readers, and then I gave them some folks. And that was, I think, Dark Horse's idea. I think it was Scott Alley's idea of like, this is how we should do the letters column. And so we asked them, like, this is what we want you to respond as. We want you to give us some questions. And Joelle is very much into etiquette and took etiquette courses when she was a teenager. And she really loves all that old stuff. So she's been doing all that. She's been answering all of those. I've been trying to joke that I should chime in every once in a while as Peck, particularly if there's like dating advice to be had, and give the male point of view. But we haven't done that yet. But yeah, that's been all her, and so we're hoping that people will actually roll right in with more. And I don't know if we need to add more legal disclaimers of like, this is not real advice.
Don't try this at home.
Yeah.
All right, and the final, most pressing question, by all means, is what happened to Doris's dogs?
Someone else asked that too. Like, we assume someone will find her eventually. I don't know that I think Joel picked a breed of dog that we found annoying anyway, so I think we'll be all right.
You're Schnauzer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, my mom has one of those. They're awful. I love that scene.
I always say I like cats because if I die, my cat's going to eat me and she'll be fine until someone finds her. The dog won't eat you.
Frodo's going to eat my eyes. It's all right.
But no, we didn't worry about the dogs. At that point, Joel had to go home. And
Schnauzers, they would eat you.
Yeah.
They're fine.
Yeah.
I think Frank actually dialed back all the yip, yip, yip sound effects that were written in there. I think he put less on the page. And I kind of saw it as like they're everywhere.
I just sort of had to know. I was like, thinking in my head, a headline, 8 dogs charged with obstruction of justice.
I think I always
body
assumed
unidentifiable.
So that the husband was going to come home and find her dead body. That was kind of always how I always saw that character. Because I might think we might have called her Mrs. in it too. So I just kind of assumed the husband was going to be stuck with dogs and probably not be that happy about it. But
yeah. That's awesome. So Aries and Aphrodite, and I'm particularly excited about this one. Just reading the synopsis, it sounds absolutely amazing. So for folks who don't know what it's about or don't know anything about it, what is the book about?
James Lucas Jones, editor-in-chief of Oni, actually gave me this logline to develop. And it was a wedding planner and a divorce lawyer fall in love. That was all he had. And so I basically then took it and was like, well, I want to think this through and make it interesting. So it's a romantic comedy, and it is that. It's a divorce lawyer and a wedding planner fall in love, but the twist is that the divorce lawyer, the man, is the only one that actually believes in true love, whereas the wedding planner, the woman, is sort of who's so disappointed of dealing with brides and the horrible nature of weddings that she's just like, this never works. Yeah. And so the challenge for them then is, and they have a spark right away, which we tried to do, is they would always like each other, but they're coming from those points of view. And while they are courting each other and flirting, they are trying to organize this Hollywood wedding where this producer is marrying a young starlet. So while Will Aries, the divorce lawyer, is finishing up his previous divorce, Gigi is planning their wedding, and then all the sort of machinations that go around that.
So what are this obviously has some influence with Greek mythology. How does that play into the story?
The first volume is subtitled Love Wars, so it kind of fits into that. It's kind of was just sort of like a title. I think James even threw me that title as well, of like, what if he called it Aries and Aphrodite? So it doesn't get that heavy into it, except for that notion of like Will is sort of destroying unions and Gigi's bringing them together, and then the irony of like why they do it. We don't get too heavy into like the symbolism or anything like that, except for their names. Like his name is Will Aries, and then she's Gigi Averell, which Averell is a version of April, which is a version of Aphrodite. That was the closest I could get to Aphrodite without being like too obvious about it.
Yeah, and then a little nod that her shop is called Goddess of Love, so you go to her bridal shop and it says that on the window.
Oh. So you don't see a lot of romantic comedies in comics. It's a different, it's not the usual medium for romantic comedies. Why do you think a romantic comedy is so important in comics?
I think as we're looking at a broader base of appeal to bring in a greater audience, I feel like every genre should be fair game. Yeah. And there's a big audience base for romantic stories. And I had begun, my first graphic novel, the first one I did with Joelle, was 12 Reasons Why I Love Her, which was not a comedy per se, but it was definitely a romance story. And I'm just attracted to, in general, even when I'm writing Madame Frankenstein or You've Killed Me and doing these genre books, I'm attracted to the central relationships. My thing is about how people interact. And so when the concept was given to me, I sort of just kind of like that idea of doing something, for once, for me, very straightforward. And like, this is the way the story is going to be told, and it's not going to have a lot of trickery, except for the times where I'm sitting there going, oh, I have to make this visually interesting. So I have to give Megan something interesting to draw, and so we jump around a little bit. But otherwise, I just sort of like, yeah, why not? I mean, we're seeing now with like all these image books that are really changing the landscape of like, there's an audience for everything.
When you think about it, oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, go for it.
I was just gonna say, like, even since high school, I noticed that there was a huge selection of romantic comedies coming out of Japan.
Yes.
In the form of manga. And I was not a huge manga fan. I went through a phase, and there's obviously some influence on my style from that artwork. But why this was such a very distinct, well-established genre for Japanese comics, but not American comics, always kind of puzzled me. I'm like, these stories are great. I don't know that I understand the artwork or really care for it that much. So why don't we have something that's drawn the way Spider-Man is drawn, but it's a rom-com? You know, it's something that's, I would hesitate to say geared just towards women, but why isn't there a comic book version of a chick flick? You know? Because some people, that's what they want to see, and those are the stories that they're interested in, and they should be able to have comics that give them that.
And I did the scripts for Tokyo Pop, and I did all, like 18 volumes of Ayori Ayoshi.
Yeah.
It was a long-term romantic comedy, which, of course, was, like, basically, like, when is he going to sleep with her?
Yeah.
And while tying all the other girls around him. But it was, like, that book has probably been read by more people than have actually read my own books.
Yeah.
So the same thing, whereas looking at these Japanese titles, and I enjoy Audrey Hepburn movies, and I love that kind of stuff. So it just, for me, was a natural fit.
Megan, what has been your favorite thing in Aries and Aphrodite to draw? All of it.
What?
I said all of it.
All of it. Yeah, even that panel of the 405 that I did kind of just to prove to Jamie I could do it.
Which panel is this?
Oh, this is in the very first chapter. It's on page 7 where Gigi's driving in traffic, and it is actually the 405 freeway that cuts through the Santa Monica Mountains. And, you know, every time I drive through it, I'm like, oh, I made my own panel. But
again, very easy to write. He's in a traffic jam on 405.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think the two leading characters and making sure that they had chemistry together. You know, it seems like a really, I'm sure to the audience it seems like it's either very simple or very difficult, but making two pencil drawings look like they're actually making eye contact and falling in love with each other is a challenge. And then their body language and the way that they move and interact with each other and how that's different than how they interact with other characters in the series. That was the most fun, because by the time I was about 30 pages in, I knew that Will and Gigi were in love. And I was totally falling for Will, and Jamie kept writing me and saying, I'm totally falling for Gigi. I'm like, this is working. This book's going to be okay.
Yeah, we had to admit to each other that I was secretly writing to try to make her fall in love with Will. And she was drawing Gigi to try to make me fall in love with her. And for me, the key visually of what you do is every time he cracks her up. In fact, if you go to my Facebook page, my header is like a panel of her laughing at one of his jokes.
Yes.
And that proves that's where you really see it in her, is how much she laughs.
Yeah.
Around him.
And it's not, cute restrained laughter. I always drew her like when he makes her laugh, she's like cracking up. It's really a moment where she just loses it, and it's unglamorous, and she's just really, really amused.
She's definitely snorting here. This is a
snort. Yeah, exactly. It's one of those like
snorter, I think. We never do the sound effect, but she's pretty much snorting.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So for folks who are really excited about this graphic novel coming out, when can they expect to see it, and what can we as readers do to show our support for this book and your other books?
It's currently on Comixology in like weekly chapters leading up to Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
So as opposed to doing issues, we're just doing it that way. But the actual book comes out in April, and so the thing to do is go to your comic shop or go to your local brick and mortar bookstore or your indie bookstore and tell them you want the book and have them order it, because they can still order it. And I don't know if the print run's been set, but Oni tends to overprint, particularly on the graphic novels. So the more they get ordered, the better for us.
Yeah, and it's going to be gorgeous. Just the design work that Hillary Thompson over at Oni did for putting our book together, like towards the last few weeks when I was cranking on colors, like every proof I was getting was just like blowing me away how nicely it was put together. So yeah,
so it's full color, Megan colored and drew it.
Yeah.
And then Jackie Nodell, who runs the Sequential Crush blog. I have an old school lisp that I can't say my R's. Wrote us an afterword about what romance comics, the history, and why we need them. And then we reprint, which you can only get in print, that introduction, a couple pages of Megan's process and my process, and then an 8-page story that we did for Mike Norton and Tim Seeley. Used to do a digital anthology called Double Feature. And several years ago, Megan and I, the first thing we did together was a romantic short called Two Wheels, 2 Feet. That's 8 pages long that we're finally putting in print in the back of Aries and Aphrodite. So the actual print version will have bonuses you can't get anywhere else.
Awesome. Are you guys doing any big promotional conventions or anything to promote the book that people can come by and see you at?
We will both be at Emerald City, I believe. I don't know that Oni will have copies available yet, but if they do, I'll have some advanced copies there. Or I'll
at least have some to carry, or each have one to carry around and show if you don't have them to sell ahead of time. But
yeah, but we'll be there. We'll be promoting the hell out of that. So.
And who knows, maybe you can go ahead and buy the original art for the last panel of the entire story.
There you go.
You can go to buy Megan's table.
I will be bringing some original Aries and Aphrodite, some Madame Frankenstein, and probably some Buffy pages as well.
So Buffy.
Tell me
about working on Buffy.
I should have waited to go get my drink now.
Yeah.
I brought the bottle.
Oh man, no, Buffy's been awesome. It was really funny to get the email from Sierra Hahn over at Dark Horse where she said, "Are you a Buffy fan at all? Are you familiar at all?" And I was like, "Oh, honey." You have no idea. That was my whole college life
cute.
and most of my 20s. But yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun because it's the story arc I'm doing is kind of romantic comedy, so it's a really good follow-up or addition to Aries and Aphrodite, and it plays on my strengths, drawing expressive characters, relating to each other, and emoting. And then I still get to draw some really cool monsters and fight scenes that, I normally wouldn't, and kittens, and
So it's like an Aries and Aphrodite Madame Frankenstein mashup.
yeah, it kind of is. Like when I got this, I was like, man, after Madame Frankenstein, I'm gonna be like that girl who makes dead people look cute, which is not a bad thing. But yeah,
it's really good to have a niche. So
yeah. That could be my niche. I'm okay with that.
making dead people look good. Well, so if for folks who want to know more about you or what you do each of you have a website where folks can go to check out your work and support you?
Go ahead.
Oh. I just have a sketch blog at the moment. It's buzzingoverbombshell.blogspot.com. And the best way to keep in touch with what I'm doing is Twitter. I'm always posting pictures of what I'm drawing if I can, and especially with Buffy, I have to be careful about spoilers. Very careful. But I'll post cat pictures and beer pictures and drawing pictures, and that's about it. So that's at Sad Megan Girls on Twitter.
Nice.
Then I have a website, confessions123.com. So the word confessions and then the numerals 123.com, and that's got a blog. It's got links to my movie reviews. I got a web store. So everything's there. And then I'm on Twitter as well. It's Jamie S. Rich, but it's 2 E's, so JAMIEESRICH, because some kid in South America already had Jamie S. Rich, shockingly enough. Never run into that before.
Jerk!
So I should have done ESS, so it's like S Rich, but I did the ES. So yeah, I keep everything updated, and that's probably the easiest way to find me on Tumblr. So I have a side Tumblr as well. I got a Pinterest. If you find one of them, I'll get you to all of them. And there's a Lady Killer Tumblr. I think it's just Lady Killer Comic at Tumblr.
Ooh, yes. I'm sure there's all kinds of reblogged household tips and or dead body disposal tips for you fans out there.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
I just got in trouble with Throwback Thursdays from Joelle. Like, you're posting all this old art, and like, get used to it. You're gonna have to deal with it. Like, you're not gonna post on the blog. I'm gonna post on the blog, and I'm gonna put the art I got. So I'm allowed of my Throwback Thursday art, so it's fine.
There was a lot of that for the book versions of Aries and Aphrodite and Madame Frankenstein, because I'm like, oh god, it's my old concept. No one's supposed to see that. Oh.
Yeah, so the Madame Frankenstein trade that's out at the end of February is an extensive section of all the art Megan did to show Image like how the book would look. Yeah, and there's a lot of great sketches in there. And
yeah, there's concept art from my days in art school when I created Gale as a character, so like ancient stuff that no one has seen.
See, now I collected it all in single issue, and now I have to get the trade too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I do. That's okay. I was gonna buy the trade for somebody for a gift anyway, eventually. So thank you guys so much for joining me and answering my questions.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Sorry, I'm old.
It's easy being a fan.
On the computer, but we got up there.
Sorry, I had the cats interrupting.
No, actually, more cats. For a tip for anybody I ever interview, if you could just find a way to get more cats into the frame. Perfect.
On my desk, and yeah.
This is like the only time that my cat is not begging me for attention. I'm like, come here, come on. What? This is your cue, and you're missing it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining me, and thank you out there for watching this interview. If you haven't read Madame Frankenstein yet, absolutely take some time to do that. Lady Killer as well, and be sure to keep your eyes peeled for Aries and Aphrodite in April, and of course my review of it, which inevitably will come along. Be sure to like this video, share, and subscribe, Weird Girls. If you subscribe and you tell us that you like us, we will ask more amazing creators more amazing, moderately amazing questions. Be sure to leave any questions you have down below in the comments. Tell me what you think. All right. And we'll sign up. Say goodbye, you guys. Say goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
You're all wonderful. All right.